My name is Jamie Schrader, Vice President of Strategy at Demac Media. Welcome to the first of 3 webinars in our web series with our partners at Tenzing that we're calling the E-commerce Coffee Break, where we'll be discussing the key trends for e-commerce in 2014. Today we're going to cover the topic of how to get people to come to your site. And for your information, we'll be doing some Q&A at the end of the webinar. So if you have any questions, don't hesitate to add it to the chat on your screen, and we'll do our best to get to as many as we can. So on that note, allow me to introduce Dave Gita from Tenzing, who will take us through it.
Thank you, Jamie. I appreciate the introduction, and thank you, everyone. I appreciate your time today. My name is Dave Gita. I'm the Director of Marketing and Product Management for Tenzing. We're an e-commerce hosting specialist, and I'm very excited to be speaking to all of you today about a topic that's near and dear to all our hearts, which is how do we get more visitors to our website? In terms of what we'll be covering today, we'll talk about some of the trends in advertising that are affecting retailers, just like you. We'll talk about a proposed solution in the form of retargeting. We'll also discuss how retargeting compares to traditional forms of advertising and how it can also augment those traditional forms of advertising. And we'll talk about how to get started with retargeting and then open it up at the end to questions and answers. So if we look at the advertising landscape today, what you'll find overall is that ad performance seems to be declining. And these stats that you see on the screen are from Monetate's e-commerce quarterly, which they published in the 4th quarter of 2013. And they talk about year-over-year declines in ad performance from 2012 to 2013. And what you'll see pretty clearly through these stats, especially when we talk about forms of advertising like email advertising, is that performance is degraded over that year period. So in 2012, Q3 2012, you'll see email in terms of conversion rates was around 3.17%. In 2013, that jumped down to 2.95%. If we take a look at revenue share by traffic source, we'll see almost a couple of percentage point drop between 2012 and 2013 for mediums like email. And even average order value is one of the few items that actually got a little bit better over that last year. But as we also look at forms of advertising like search and social, overall we're seeing declines in ad performance, which are making it more and more challenging to get visitors to our website in the numbers that we need them and affordably. Another interesting statistic, this one from Adobe Digital Marketing blog, is related to the cost of that advertising. So this particular piece of research focused on Google's new product listings, and what it's showing year over year was a 70% increase in costs in that period for a Google product listing ad. But if you look a little bit more closely at the graph, you'll also notice that most of the other forms of advertising covered in the research, like Google Text ads, Facebook ads, Bing ads, also saw a slight increase. So along with that declining performance, we're dealing with a climate where search and other forms of advertising are just getting more expensive. So one of the proposed solutions to this challenge is retargeting. So I thought it would be great if we all started with a common understanding of what we mean by retargeting, because folks have kind of a slightly different take from time to time on what retargeting is. And if you boil it down to the basics, retargeting is simply a way of focusing display ads on a subset of shoppers based on their behavior. Another way to think about this is it's like taking the strengths of search, and one of the core strengths of search obviously is relevancy, and marrying that to an ad medium like display advertising and showing folks those display ads in a much more relevant and meaningful way. And there are statistics to show that display ad retargeting actually outperforms traditional display advertising by a factor of 10. So a very powerful tool when it comes to increasing the performance of display ads. Now, when most people think about retargeting, they predominantly think of site retargeting, and this is the ability to focus your display advertising on folks who have visited your website, shoppers. One way to think about it is if you think of the average conversion rate for for e-commerce sites being at about 2.5%. This is a industry spread here, cross-industry spread. That means that about 97.5% of traffic hitting a website is non-converted. And so one way to think about retargeting is it's a way of re-engaging with that overwhelming majority of folks who have visited your site and not responded, and essentially getting a second chance with them, getting an opportunity to give them exposure to your brand and to your messaging in a relevant way through display advertising. But that's not the only form of retargeting that's out there. There are other forms which include search retargeting. So this is the ability to focus display ads on shoppers who search for particular types of product through search engines like Google and Bing. There are also forms of email retargeting, which enable you to focus display ads on shoppers who've opened emails that you've sent to them. And there's even the ability to focus display ads simply based on a list of email addresses of shoppers that you'd like to focus your marketing on. So in essence, retargeting is a way of, through any one of these variety of means, connecting with a particular buyer across the number of different properties that they may be exposed to on any given day, whether that's a social network like Facebook or a content site like Mashable, and presenting them with ads that are tailored to them in very specific ways, and we'll talk about that tailoring in a moment. Here's a more detailed listing of the types of retargeting, some of which we've covered already. Obviously, site retargeting we've talked about, search retargeting, email retargeting. One we haven't talked about quite yet, but is also available, is something called profile retargeting. This is the ability to serve ads to people who are similar in characteristic to some of your best performing customers. And this is a type of profiling that can be done both based on demographics as well as behavioral factors. And we also obviously talked about list targeting, the ability to, in a more focused way and relevant way, show display advertising to simply a list of folks that you have email addresses for. So how does retargeting compare to traditional forms of advertising? Well, in one research study that was conducted by ComStore of sites that had begun retargeting initiatives, they found a 720% lift, 26% lift in site visits within a 4-week period of the commencement of the retargeting program. They also saw over 1,000% lift in branded search in that same 4-week period. And for those shoppers that were specifically retargeted, they found that they were 70% more likely to complete a sale than a shopper that had not been exposed to those retargeting display ads. Another interesting metric, this one comes to us from Facebook Exchange, and this is comparing the performance of Facebook Exchange ads between 2012 and 2013. And what they found in that year period was that Facebook Exchange saw a 34% increase in conversion rates, a 95% increase in click-through rates, and a 31% decrease in cost per click. So phenomenal improvement in conversion over that period, while at the same time lower costs. If only all of our advertising mediums could claim the same statistics. So again, a very powerful mechanism for getting visitors to your website, and one, unlike many others, that's actually going down in cost. Now, there are a variety of different platforms available that help you with retargeting, and we've listed about 12 or so here, and also mapped them to the types of retargeting that are available on each of those platforms. So you'll find everyone from providers like AdRoll and Trigit and Monetate who offer site retargeting, through to providers like Magnetic and Chango that offer both site and search retargeting, to companies like Simplify and platforms like Simplify that offer site, search, and profile retargeting, and to much more comprehensive platforms like Retargeter that offer site, search, email, and list retargeting. Now, there are a couple of important things to consider as you're exploring these different ad retargeting platforms. One of the first and probably one of the most important ones is you really need to understand the reach of each provider you're considering. and you need to match their ad inventory, the reach of their network, to your specific type of shopper. So you want to make sure that they're aligned with the type of shopper that you're going after, and have access to the types of content and content sites and social networks that your buyers typically interact with. I can't underscore this one any more than I've done already here. It's really important that you make sure that you're aligned. The other thing you're going to want to do is examine the level of segmentation and personalization available on each platform, and those two go hand in hand. It is critically important to be able to identify segments within your current audience space that you want to target, but segmentation doesn't really help unless there's a corresponding ability to actually personalize that experience for that segment, whether that's presenting them with certain types of products or certain types of messaging. So before you get started with these platforms, it's really important that you understand what type of segmentation and personalization they offer, and make sure that that's aligned with the types of ads that you want to run. A third and final and critical consideration is you need to explore the vendor's ability to help with creative for your retargeting campaigns. So you can have the platform with the biggest reach, you can have sophisticated segmentation and personalization available, but if you don't have the creative to back that strategy up, very often that's where you see a lot of these projects fail. And so a lot of these vendors have begun incorporating features into their products to enable the automatic creation of creative for you. A good example of this would be the AdRoll platform. So you're going to want to explore the vendor's ability to help with automatically creating that creative for you. And this is especially important if you're a smaller organization and you don't have the wherewithal to create the variety of different display ads that you'll need to support segmentation strategy. Well, that's it, and I guess at this point we'll turn it over to questions from the audience, and I'll hand the mic back to Jamie. Thanks, Jamie.
Awesome, Dave. Thank you so much, and thanks for that great presentation. That was really good to know. Just before we get into the questions, I want to remind you all that this is the first in 3 of our web series. We will be resuming next Thursday on February 20th at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. We'll be covering the topic of keeping the customers on your site once you got them there. And then on Thursday, February 27th at 2 p.m., we'll wrap up with our last set in the webinar series where we'll talk about how to set your site up for success. So please be sure to join us again next week on the 20th at 2 p.m. and again one last time on February 27th at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So at this time, we'll take a look at what questions we have coming in. Oh, we have a bunch here, so thanks so much, guys, for that. The first question is, how could I use retargeting to help with shopping cart abandonment? So I'm gonna actually take this one. If shopping cart abandonment is in fact a very serious metric and something that we always have to consider, retargeting is a great tool, and in fact, when most people hear shopping cart abandonment, they actually think of a shopping cart abandonment campaign through an email provider, and that's by far, it's a form of retargeting, and it's by far one of the most effective ways to reduce the shopping cart abandonment rate and get customers to come back to your site and buy. So very often, we would see a strategy like an email that gets sent to somebody who has items in their cart, a few hours later reminding them that they're in their cart, and then maybe later that day or the next day, a small discount or coupon to invite them to come back and complete that purchase. So retargeting is a great tool to help reduce shopping cart abandonment because very often it's that little extra bit of information that kind of reminds them to come back to the site and complete their cart. And these days it's very common to have the perpetual carts on your site. So the idea of getting them back to your site, having items already in their cart is that one step towards conversion. So that's a great question. Moving along to the next question here, where is the best place to start retargeting? Things like the lowest cost, and what would have the highest impact? I guess, Dave, you want to take that one?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Jamie. And again, another great question. Well, I think one of the misconceptions about retargeting is that it's very expensive and very complicated, and that couldn't be farther from the truth. Perhaps one of the easiest ways to get started with retargeting would be simply to open up an account with Facebook, and for example, and begin leveraging their Facebook Exchange advertising. If you and even if you want to get a little bit more sophisticated than that, there are options available to you. For example, AdRoll, which is a great site retargeting platform. It actually has an integration with Facebook Exchange, and also provides you with a variety of different content networks that you can connect to. Even a platform that robust isn't really very expensive. There are no minimums, for example, for a lot of these lower-end platforms, and no long-term contracts. Everything's month to month. So you can set a target budget, begin doing some of your testing, and in many cases, some of these platforms actually even help you with the creative part of the equation, all for that same low initial upfront cost. So yeah, it's a common misconception, but it's a lot easier to get started and a lot less expensive than most people would imagine.
Awesome, thank you. All right, we have time for one last question here, and this is a good one here, considering that both Tenzing and Demac Media are Magento partners. How can retargeting be done with Magento? That's actually a terrific question, because Magento being an open source platform, and with us working with Magento very often, we see this question come up all the time. The one thing to recognize is that Magento is an open source platform, so it allows you to really implement extensions and extend the platform to whatever works best for you. So working with a lot of the platforms that Dave has taken us through today, adding tagging and elements to the site to accommodate these platforms would be actually quite easy and quite very, very doable with an open source platform like Magento. One thing that I would caution, though, is that people tend to, because of the great amount of extensions that exist for Magento, people might tend to kind of use an extension out there or some sort of custom device tool to build out retargeting programs, and avoid working with a platform as widely known as some of the ones that David pointed out. And I would just caution people to make sure that they recognize that it is a very important program, and it's got to be done in a strong and positive way. So I want to make sure that you take advantage of these kinds of platforms that exist, and shy away from the sort of guy built a platform in his basement that's trying to just make an extension from Magento scenario. It sometimes seems a little bit easier at the beginning, but ends up not being able to accomplish all the different things that a platform might. So while it's an open source platform, Magento, and it's a great tool to extend, we still very highly recommend working with a platform who knows what they're doing. So on that note, thank you guys again for the time and for asking your great questions. We really appreciate it. Again, we want to remind you to join us next week for the second of our webinars, and then in 2 weeks on the 27th for the third. And we look forward to seeing you again soon. So thank you very much for attending today. Dave, thanks so much for your time and for your great presentation. And we look forward to seeing you all again soon.